The Chicago Bulls get an NBA Cup win against the Washington Wizards, which now has them as number one in their group. And a win over the Boston Celtics on Friday could secure their spot in the elimination round. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about what's been the biggest surprise so far for the Chicago Bulls this season and preview tonight's game against the Orlando Magic. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this game from yesterday first. So I was not on the post-game show yesterday. Shout out to Q for holding it down on the live stream on the channel after the game. But this game, it started off with the Bulls and the Washington Wizards kind of going back and forth. And then 8 points by Jalen Smith in the second quarter, which pushed the Bulls into the tie it at 36 apiece. And at that point, the Bulls never looked back. It was all the Chicago Bulls at that point on. When you look at the dunk that Matas Bucilis had to really change the momentum of that game as well, the Bulls came into this and took advantage of the worst defense in the league. The Washington Wizards make you realize just how the Bulls defense is bad, but it's not Washington Wizards bad, right? So the Bulls were able to take advantage of that. Really big performances. Coby Wright really rode some momentum in this game. After looking like it may be a slow start to him, he really woke up. 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists from Coby White in this game. And it was everything that we needed from Coby White. He led the team in scoring in this game. He made big buckets in this game. And the Bulls, in their 127-108 victory, a lot of that is due to Coby White, but not just that, right? One thing that we've seen consistently with this Bulls team, when you have multiple players in double digits, meaning your whole starting lineup plus whoever can contribute off the bench, that's when the Bulls really are at their most dangerous and the offense is rocking and rolling. You got 12 points off the bench from Jalen Smith, 13 points off the bench from THT. Matas Bucilis with 9 points off the bench in his 17 minutes, going 4-7 from the field with 4 rebounds. 11 points from Josh Giddey, 8 assists, 4 rebounds from him. He was only 2 of 6 from the field, but he did impact the game in other ways. He was able to get to the free throw line, which is something that we've really been calling for him to do a little bit more frequently. 12 points from Dosunmu, who had a really good game. He was plus 22 in this game. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. This is the type of game that Dosunmu can have. He may not have the scoring output of the 16 points per game that he averaged as a starter last year or anything like that, because you got Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic operating at great rates, plus Ayo's playing a much different position. But this is how Ayo can be impactful for the Chicago Bulls. That two-way play, putting up points where you need him to put them up. And he had a really good job. It's not always about being on the scoreboard for impact. And also when you look at it, 42.9% from the field as well, that's important when it comes down to that. Like Dosunmu had a really good game in this one and really good way that he contributed to this game as well. Then you also look at Zach LaVine with his 18 points. And at some point in this game, Zach LaVine realized this isn't the night that I got to do a lot of the heavy lifting scoring-wise. And I don't knock Zach LaVine for that, right? He didn't have to do much. And at the end of the day, as much as Zach LaVine has been really good for the Chicago Bulls over this season, giving effort on both sides of the ball, when it comes down to it, without Jordan Poole with the Washington Wizards, he took a bit of a back seat, and that's what you want to allow. There should be times in the season when you're playing and playing as a balanced offense that some of your players are able to not take nights off, but take it a little bit easy offensively. And that's what Zach LaVine did, and he allowed Coby to really have that moment. 14 shots for Zach LaVine last night, 6 of 14 from the field, 4 of 8 from three-point range. He also had 4 assists, 1 rebound in this game, only 1 turnover for Zach as well. And Zach LaVine played a really efficient game with only having that 1 turnover. And like I said, that's the type of game that you want to have in a night where Zach LaVine's offense isn't needed as much as it is in some of the nights. And that's another thing, the balance that was here on the offense, right? 19 points and 12 rebounds from Vooch as well, 4 assists. And when you look at it, no player in that starting lineup took more than 14 shots. 14 for Vooch, 13 for Coby, 14 for Zach, 10 for Ayo, 6 shots for Josh Giddey, right? Matter of fact, if you look at the whole Bulls team, nobody took more than 14 shots. 11 for Jalen Smith, 7 for Matas Bucilis. They both led the team in shot attempts coming off the bench. Next up was Julian Phillips and THT with 6 each. Like, the balance of this offense, and we use that to shoot 50% from the field. Not usually what we shoot from 3, 35% from 3, but it's against the Washington Wizards defense, you can get away with that. So it is what it is when it comes down to that. And the Bulls just performed adamantly in this game. This was a good, solid win by a Bulls team against an inferior opponent, and that's what you want. Is you need to take advantage of the inferior opponents to be able to get the wins where you can. That doesn't mean that you can just be bottom feeders, right? We definitely don't want the Chicago Bulls to just thrive off just bottom feeding. But the way that the Bulls went about this game and the way that they took care of it, they had more offensive rebounds in this game. I mean, more rebounds overall in this game. They out-rebounded them by 4. You look at the Bulls limiting turnovers to 10, which only turned into 8 points off turnovers for the Washington Wizards because they couldn't capitalize on it. You know, we've talked a lot about this season, the Bulls consistently giving up over 20 points off turnovers. They didn't do that. And for once, we won the points in the paint battle as well. 60 points in the paint for the Chicago Bulls, only 46 for the Washington Wizards. We don't usually get like that balance is usually in the opposite way against the Chicago Bulls, right? So the Bulls took care of business in this game. And you know, I'm not going to glaze over the win. I've seen some comments. I was in the live stream even though I didn't host it, but you know, some people saying, "Oh, well, see, this just shows that the Bulls can be." It was against the Washington Wizards. This is a terrible defense. Yes, the Bulls did what they needed to do, right? 61% in the paint, true shooting percentage of 61%. This is what you should do against the worst defense in the NBA. This is what you should do, right? Especially when you have the high-powered offense that you can have, and they were without Jordan Poole. So, no, I'm not going to glaze this win to all of a sudden mean that this is some Bulls team that can do something special in the playoffs or it's going to turn their season around or anything like that. No, this is still a bottom-feeding team. They just beat the other bottom feeder, and that's great. That's fine. That's what you want to do, right? And, you know, the Bulls, like I said, they got another matchup coming against the Orlando Magic tonight. We'll preview that game and talk about everything going into that game. But overall, like, it's just good to see the Bulls take care of business because I tell you what, after that first quarter, when they were down by 8 in that first quarter, I was like, here we go. This is going to be the type of game where the Bulls just they shit the bed against a team like the Washington Wizards. Then they turned it around in the second quarter, scoring 40 points in the second quarter of this game and only giving up 18, and they never looked back after that. They won all 3 quarters after the first quarter, 40-18 in the second quarter, 35-34 in the third quarter, and 31-27 in the fourth quarter. That's what you need. You were able to put out the human white flags in this game as well. Chris Duarte checked in, Javon Carter checked in, and you know, if you see those two check in, they both played 2 minutes, it either means that the Bulls are playing great and it's a blowout for us, or it's a blowout in the other direction. So, it was good to see those guys out there not be white flags. They were actually victory flags this time for the Chicago Bulls. And so really good overall balance from that. Love to see the fact that that Billy Donovan is now playing Modest Bucelis even after Julian Phillips came back. Like we know Julian is working himself back from injury, but he played 22 minutes in this game. Julian Phillips led the team in minutes off the bench. That's going to happen as long as Dosunmu's in that starting lineup. But it's good to see that Modest did not completely shrink away and go into the background, and we just did not see Modest Bucelis. And he had a really good game, another solid game in his run in there. He was 3 of 3 in the paint, and like I've said multiple times with Modest, in the half court, he's gonna disappoint you sometimes. But what you're able to see from him as far as in the open court, if you get him in the open court and he can get out there and run and cut and get his dunks and those type of things, that builds his confidence, and he's going to take other shots when it comes down to it. So it's good to see that Billy Donovan may have Modest Bucelis now in his rotation on a more permanent basis. Thank God. Let's hope that that's the case. But we got to see. Lonzo's coming back. P. Will is eventually going to come back. And then we got to see what and how Billy Donovan uses Modest Bucelis once those guys are back. But this is Modest's opportunity to show that he deserves a chance and an opportunity to stay in that lineup while those two guys are down. And let's hope that Modest continues to take advantage of the minutes that are given to him. And right now, he's doing that in the last few games. And so shout out to Modest Bucelis. Good, solid win by the Chicago Bulls, that they took care of business, that they didn't shit the bed. But I'm not going to all of a sudden use this to turn around the perception on the Bulls. No, we'll see that. We'll see, especially in the next 2 games. The rest of this week, we got Orlando, who's playing great. We'll preview that game. We got Boston coming up in an NBA Cup game. We'll see how that shakes out for the Bulls. But let's move on to the next topic for today. Bleacher Report had an article in which was the biggest surprise for each team. And Bleacher Report labeled the return of Lonzo Ball as the biggest surprise this season. And this is where, I know I've been accused of getting on high horses or maybe being a gatekeeper when it comes to Chicago Bulls and other like the national media with Chicago Bulls content. And I'm sorry, somebody got it. Because Lonzo Ball, while the return has been good, make no mistake about it, it hasn't been the biggest surprise because, again, he's played 3 games. He's missed 15 games or 16 games, I think, at this point, right? So, no, I'm sorry. Listen, I love Lonzo Ball, and I love what he's able to do when he's on the court. And, yes, the fact that when he was on the court and healthy, he didn't look like he had to shake off a lot of rust. He was active. He was trying to play like himself. All that's great to see. Not taken away from any of that. But to say that the biggest surprise this season has been Lonzo Ball in 3 games, I get it that the Bulls season has been disappointing. Not many people have very many expectations for the Chicago Bulls season. But to me, no, it's not that. It's just not that. And don't get me wrong, can he be the biggest surprise this season if he's able to stay healthy the rest of the way through? Absolutely, and we'll see what Lonzo Ball brings to court. This is not a slight in any stretch of the imagination to Lonzo Ball and who he is as a player, right? I can't wait to get Lonzo back on the court. I can't wait to see what Lonzo does for the rest of the season and how he helps these young players and everybody develop on this team and help them win basketball games. But you can't call somebody who's played 3 out of 19 games the biggest surprise of the season, in my personal opinion. Now, if you're looking at some surprises in the season, I mean, one could say Zach LaVine's season on his two-way play, right, because of how things were talked about him in the offseason. But then again, Zach LaVine's just kind of getting back to what Zach LaVine has done. Nikola Vucevic and how he looked like he was declining and has had a great season. That's something else that could be labeled as a surprise for the Chicago Bulls this season. But I'll say this, surprises don't need to be positive, right? They can also be negative. And so while the thing is, to me, I would say that the biggest surprise as far as positivity for this team so far this season, for me personally, has been how legitimately the Bulls have changed this offense. Like when you look at the offense, it's night and day different for how we get out in the court, how many three-point shots we're taking, how effective we're being from the three-pointer as well, generally. Last night was not one of those nights, but generally how effective we're being from the three-point line, but also just the fact of how well we've integrated so many new pieces when you look at Jalen Smith and what he's brought to this team. Adding Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips to actually being players that are playing roles for this team. And while Dalen was -24 in the plus-minus, he didn't play a great game yesterday, but like what Dalen has done overall this season, Julian Phillips and what he's done, right? Like overall, like really to change so much of your play style from one year to another year is not common. And I think that we've come accustomed to it because they did it basically right in the first game of the preseason, but it's just not common to be able to change that much of your play style that quickly. It's just not, regardless of how many, especially when you keep the same coach. So, that is a surprise this season. But as far as negatives, I think there are more negative surprises, and it's like the up and down play of Dosunmu and Josh Giddey up until this point. Now, again, Io seems like he's coming out of it. Josh Giddey, I think it's more of a confidence thing as well. But and I think they're going to be good. But like the slow starts by Io and Josh Giddey to a degree have definitely been a surprise for me this season because the way that Io finished last season, now I know his position and role drastically changed, but I didn't expect it to come off this slow. And I'm not even talking about offensively. Like Dosunmu, what he did offensively last year, I think was special, but defensively, right? We've always come to really rely on Dosunmu's defense, and it just hasn't been there through the 19 games this season. I'd say probably 6 of those games we've really seen the Dosunmu that we're used to seeing impact the game defensively, but we're starting to see more of it. I think he's going to be fine over the course of the season. 19 games in, there's still a lot of games left to be played, right? So I want to be clear there. But I think overall, like that's one of the surprises from me. And also one of the negative surprises as well, Billy Donovan's handling of Modest Bucilis. Like this is your highest draft pick since Patrick Williams. And the fact is that that he was just thrown out there and thrown in the corner. Like it's not surprising that Billy Donovan would do that to somebody, but it's kind of surprising that with everything that Modest came into the season talking about that's what it would be, right? And again, I'm not somebody who thought that Modest was going to get a whole lot of minutes to start off with this season either, but it's been a mishandling. And how when Modest has played some of his better games, he's actually followed that up with not playing many minutes the next game. Now, that's changed recently, and I got to give Billy Donovan credit as well that it seems like that's starting to change. And so I do think that the play and the development of Modest Bucilis can also turn into a positive. Like Modest Bucilis and Lonzo Ball have the chances to be the biggest surprises for the Bulls in how they're able to impact games. And I need to see more of Bucilis with Lonzo Ball out in the open court because I think that is going to be dangerous, especially when you have Julian out there and Dalen defensively to kind of start and generate those fast breaks. Like it could be really fun to watch as long as with Jalen Smith. But I think overall, like I get what they're doing, and I understand why Bleacher Report picked Lonzo because Yeah, a lot of people were talking. Hell, I was right. Was one of those people. We're talking about Modest like his career. I mean, and Lonzo like his career could be over. And he came in and basically has looked like Lonzo Ball right away. And yeah, that is a surprise considering everything that Lonzo's been through with the surgeries and the like. He has 2 surgeries that nobody in the NBA has ever come back to, and the fact that he's doing it in this manner, you got to give him credit for that. You got to look at Lonzo. And that is a surprise to a degree. So I understand it. But when you look at the basketball of it, right, the actual on the court of it or whatever's going on with this team, right, and you factor in what we've seen as people who've watched this team for years, I think that a lot of the changes that have happened here, and also I'll say this, how bad defensively this Bull. Like, I thought the Bulls were going to be bad defensively. Make no mistake about it. I said it. I was talking about it literally since even before preseason or training camp happened. This team is going to struggle defensively. But how bad the Bulls have been and consistently bad, it's also been a surprise in a way as far as like, I didn't think they'd be bottom of the league bad. Like literally, I'm talking about like bottom 3 of the league. I thought they may be like sub middle of the pack, like more around 17, 18. But to be 28th, like that's ugly. And I did not think it would be that bad for the Bulls. But overall, I'll say this, and I'm not changing. I'd have to see stuff against better teams sustain for longer. And no way am I changing. I still have my 30 to 35 win prediction for this Bulls team, right? And the point differential will tell you that maybe it's going to be a little bit worse than that. But I think overall, like, yeah, this team has things that it needs to work on. And we'll see what comes down to it. But yeah, man. Also, maybe a surprise could also be listed as if the Bulls come out of this group play, keep in mind, we right now lead Group C. We have a plus 15 point differential. There's 3 teams in that group that have 2-1 records. And it really comes down to this Bulls game versus Boston Celtics on Friday. If the Bulls win this game, they are going to win this group. If the Boston Celtics win this and eliminate the point differential, they're going to win the group. Like this Friday game for the Bulls, meaning as much as what it does in the NBA Cup. And again, I'm having fun with the Cup. I know not everybody is, but that's a bit of a surprise too, in my opinion. But let me know your thoughts. What's the biggest surprise for you so far on the season for the Chicago Bulls? But let's go ahead and get into the game tonight. We got a game against the Magic, and this could be the return of Lonzo Ball. All things are pointing to Lonzo is returning tonight for the Chicago Bulls, which is great. The Magic have won 9 out of their last 10 games. And despite Paolo Banchero being out, this is a team that sits at 12-7 right now. I think they're the 3rd team in the Eastern Conference as well. And I had thought after Paolo went down, I was like, they just need to stay afloat enough, right? Hover around 6, 7, 8. And then when Paolo comes back, they can really finish the rest of the season strong. And they said, no. Franz Wagner has come into this team, and he's averaging 23 points per game. And when you look at some of the big performances he's had, the 30-point performances that he's had, like he's a huge part of why this Orlando Magic offense has been as potent as what it has been. And he's shooting the ball crazy right now from the field. Not too crazy from 3. He's 34% in the month of November overall, but like Franz is the thing that you got to look to stop in this game. Like if you can slow down Franz, which I don't know if the Bulls are going to be able to, our perimeter defense has not been that great. His ability to get to the rim as well and finish is going to be really big for this Magic team. So you got to look out for that. But also Jalen Suggs and how he's grown offensively this year as well while keeping up his defense. Mo Wagner, he's been great as well for this team. And so this is really a team that's doing it. When you look at it, they have 4 players averaging double-digit points. And one of those is Paolo Banchero, so he's not in. They have 3 players averaging double-digit points. Everybody else is like by committee, 8 points, 8.7, 7.5, right? So they have a lot of players contributing, and that makes them actually a more dangerous team, and they still got that defense. And keep in mind, they haven't gotten really shit offensively from KCP this year so far. That shooting that they hoped he was going to bring in has not really been there at all. This is a dangerous team, and this is a team that can absolutely kill the Bulls in some of the places that the Bulls are the weakest at. The Bulls have to be on their P's and Q's, and they have to come in this one with a game plan. They haven't always performed the best on coming out of back-to-backs, which is another thing that you have to look out for this team. But the Magic still have the best defense in the league. They are only allowing 102 points per game. That's it. That is the best in the league by far. And so while this Bulls offense is a top 5 offense in the league, averaging 117.9 per game, it really comes down to this for the Bulls. Can the Bulls offense outpace the Orlando Magic's defense? That's what it comes down to, because we know the Bulls do not have the defensive level that the Orlando Magic have to match them by any stretch of the imagination. So it's going to have to come via this Bulls offense is going to have to be efficient. We're going to have to see one of the most efficient versions of the Bulls offense that we've seen, period, against this Orlando Magic team, because they're going to try to force turnovers. They're going to try to do that. They're going to try to get into the paint. They're going to try to do that. You know what else the Magic do? They force the most turnovers in the league. They're averaging teams that they face off against are averaging almost 16 turnovers per game. You got to watch out for that, because the Magic are absolutely going to try to force you into bad positions. They're going to try to make you uncomfortable in your shooting. And so the Bulls' perimeter shooting, that three-point shot better be hot, or they're going to have to move, or they're going to have to play, get out in transition and attack before the Orlando Magic's defense sets up. That's their best chance for that. And look at the Bulls using a lot of the same things that they try to establish in this game against the Boston Celtics on Friday as well. So, going to be a very interesting game. The Bulls are going to have to be locked in if they want to win this one, and we'll see if they can do it. Let me know your guys' thoughts on everything down below. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.